We went there last year to get information about this story, and in next month we will go back and actually film the entire story. But the facts were that while the priest was handing out communion in church, host dropped on the floor. Rather than consume it, he put it into a bowl of water. Can you believe it or not? 7 days later, they noticed that the host begins to bleed. There's the priest. Here he is showing to us the sample. There it is there. You can see what happened was that they actually poured the content from a receptacle onto an altar cloth or a cloth, allowed it to dry, and what you see there is the product of what had dried out on the cloth. There it is a bit closer. So the priests then arranged for the sample to be examined by two professors at the University of Ballistock, two professors of science, each of them with 30 years' experience. When you look on the internet, you see that these two professors have pages and pages of papers on scientific matters that they've dealt with. They're not novices, they are people who know what they're doing. And their results are quite extraordinary. There they are telling us what they found. And this is what they found, that the substance was completely composed of heart muscle, that it was human, that it had been living, that there was damage to the tissue, and there was evidence of rapid spasms of the heart muscle just before death. And they said that if you had to take that sample, which was living, to give it to us, the person from whom it came would have had to have died, because you can't take 1 centimetre of living heart muscle out of a body without the person dying. That's amazing. But the one thing that they said, that when I asked them the question, is it possible that someone could have manipulated this story? And they said the telling factor for us was that when we looked at this heart muscle under the microscope, we could see that interlaced between the fine fibres of the muscle were fibres of the host, so perfectly integrated into the muscle that no human being could do something so minuscule that you have to see it under a microscope to form that picture. An incredible story. And in fact, one of the professors in writing on this story wrote, "I'd like to stress that testing of the host was the most momentous research task which I've ever performed in my entire life. If I were not to perform any other research task, this would be still the most important one to me. I could not imagine that trying to explain something so extraordinary, something so impossible from a scientific point of view, would be part of my scientific experience. To us, it was the most wonderful event that ever could happen to an ordinary human being." Not bad from two Polish professors. And then in the context of that the weaving of the tissue in the muscle, they said, one of them said, "Please believe me that if someone intended to tamper with this sample, it would be impossible to bind the two pieces of matter in such an indissoluble way." So these three cases are incredible contributions, I think, to the world today. There's similarities in the three of them. I mean, this bread is not transformed on the way home from the supermarket. In each case, there is a similar set of circumstances. It's happened in a Catholic Mass. It's happened in a way that the residue has defied scientific explanation. There's one thing I missed when I was telling you about the white blood cells in the Argentina case. The sample had been perfect. So there's something happening in each case that defies science in terms of the preservation of the material. In each case, it's heart muscle. It's the same muscle of the heart. In each case, and certainly in the two cases of Poland and Argentina, the heart has actually suffered. And that's another confirmatory factor. Science can't explain how this happened, and yet it happened. There's no book you can go to in the library, a science book, that will tell you how such a thing could happen. But we all know what book you can go to give you a clue about this phenomenon. There's only one book I know that's written 2,000 years ago where they talked about bread and wine becoming body and blood. And it, to me, is a very powerful argument for the validity of the Bible that can predict a scientific event that only happens in our times that can be confirmed by modern science. But even a bigger question arises, because what now does science say about something that contravenes so radically our laws of science, of biology? We've actually got an undermining of one of the foundations of the rules of science, particularly in biology, that from inanimate matter we have got human life. You can imagine the implications that's going to have, and that's the subject of a book that I'm currently writing, which is on the impact of these two stories for science and the origins of life. But I just realised my papers are getting all wet. I don't know, whoever's trying to sell water here must have been selling defective products, because I think I only give him $1.98 for that water. Part of it's missing. It's all over here. Sorry to diverge on that. Okay. Also, you know, this is for the priests amongst us. This must be so reassuring to think that there's only one person on earth that can bring about this event. In each case, it was a priest who was able to bring life from non-life in the context of those miracles, those Eucharistic miracles, reinforcing the power of the priesthood. But, you know, I'd like to go back just briefly to the finding of heart. It's an amazing story that I think that God should allow in our time this insight into the Eucharist. It comes at a time, I think, that the Eucharist is really undersold. If we look at the Church's teachings, we know that during the Mass, at the time of the consecration, when the bread and wine is offered, it becomes the body and blood of Christ. And we're taught that it's not symbolic, it's real, that Jesus becomes really present in body, blood, soul and divinity. It's as if Jesus is there in person. And when you think about the magnitude of that, who is this Jesus? The creator of the universe, the one who created you, the one who sustains your life, the one who will meet you at your death and determine whether you are eligible to enter into his kingdom. And if you are, he will crown you as a king and give you the inheritance of the kingdom that he promises. But yet he humbles himself to come in the form of a piece of bread so that during this life you can win him over for that judgment. These miracles, I think, give us an incredible bolster in our belief of what the Church teaches about the real presence. And it comes at a time when I think there is such a little belief in it, because when you look at the number of people who go to Mass who are Catholics, they couldn't possibly be aware of what they're missing. I know in my own parish where I live, we have 6,000 Catholics nominally, and only 600 go to Mass, which is 10%. I think that's pretty much the case in most parishes. That means 90% of Catholics don't believe in the real presence. Because if they did, there would be traffic jams going to Mass. When you think about it, that you can go there, speak to Jesus, and he says, I'm there till the end of time. You know, I speak about this, and it sounds too good to be true in many ways. One day I actually, not putting it to the test, there was a friend of mine who was a journalist. He was out of work, been out of work for 6 months, lapsed Catholic. And he was talking about how hard it was to get a job. And I said, look, I tell you what, I can guarantee you can get a job. What? Yes, yeah. Look, go to the nearest Catholic church, kneel before the tabernacle, believe that Jesus is there, and say to him, if you give me a job, I'll stand up for you. I promise you that. And if you did that, you would get a job, because no one does that. He's been looking for someone to do that. Well, this bloke was so desperate, he did. A lapsed Catholic goes there. I'm not going to identify who he is. He's on television today. I won't tell you who he is. And it's not Mike Willesee. And he's kneeling there. So I said, go and do that. I can guarantee you get a job, because no one does that. And Jesus is alive. He's there. He's looking for it. He's waiting for someone to come and do that. I can guarantee it.